30. I don't know if it's the same conversation or not. Okay, we're on now.
I'll call the meeting to order and begin with the land acknowledgement statement. On Tuesday, April 9th, 2024, we acknowledge that this sacred land on which Smiths Falls is now located has been a site of human activity for over 10,000 years and is rich in Indigenous history. This land is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. We are grateful to the Algonquin ancestors who cared for the land and water in order that we might meet here today. We are also grateful to the Algonquin people for their contribution in the making of the Rideau Canal, which runs through Smiths Falls. We are mindful of broken covenants and the need to reconcile with all our relations. Together, may we care for this land and each other, drawing on the strength of our mutual history of nation building through peace and friendship, being mindful of generations to come. Next item is the approval of the agenda. So would someone move that we approve the agenda? Or I guess we have an amendment to the agenda.
Yes. I would like to make the amendment by switching project updates before priority issues, just because our councillor representative is not here right now. And it would be nice to have him being here to discuss that.
Okay.
And if that works for people, then
All right. Well, with that change, would someone move that we approve the agenda, please? Lorraine, and a seconder? Jenny, thank you. All in favor? Yes, we're all in favor. And the adoption of the minutes from our last meeting on March 12th. Again, we've had the minutes and reviewed them. Motion to approve the minutes, Lorraine, and a seconder, Jenny, thank you. Disclosure of monetary interest, anyone? No? Okay, so we'll go ahead then with project updates. The first one being the 2024 Heritage Symposium. We have not succeeded in having a Heritage Symposium planning meeting to date. I'm wondering if we can, at this meeting now, begin to think about the date and the venue for the symposium so that we can then start looking for presenters. Any suggestions on the date? Is it usually in October, I believe? Is it October usually? They have a symposium?
September, October, I guess.
Yeah.
The end of September, October.
Okay. And day of the week?
It's always been a weekend day. I
Like
think
a
we've
Friday?
sometimes had Saturday. Actually, I think always Saturday. Do you remember, Jenny? I think
It's usually Friday.
Friday.
Like last year we had a Monday, I believe, did we not? We had to move it to a Monday.
We had a Friday one
I
year
think it's always
Yeah,
Friday.
I think it's been on
during the
Friday.
day.
Yes,
I believe so.
yes.
Oh, I wonder why that. I mean, I probably organized that. But,
Yes, you
it
did.
kind of limits people that are working.
I was going to say the same thing.
Like, traditionally, it's always been.
Well, why don't we just keep it that way then? If it's something we've started,
Mhm.
my old mind forgot that. So.
It makes no difference to me, but
Yeah, no, I think it's kind of nice to have it traditional. And has it always been similar weekend? I should have looked that up.
in the fall sometime anyway.
Yeah, early fall, wasn't it?
On occasion, it was the Friday before Thanksgiving, and I think that you moved away from that because
Yeah,
people
people wanted to go away.
wouldn't be
Yeah.
available. Yeah,
I think
so
we made it the week after.
well, we can avoid that. So the week, when is Thanksgiving?
It's the 14th. That's the Monday. So
Okay.
the 11th would be the Friday before. So you could do the week before would be the 4th, or the week after would be the 18th of October.
The 4th or the 18th?
Maybe the 18th will give us more time because we really haven't had a meeting yet. So
No, okay, so October 18th for a tentative date, and then you say that's a Friday?
Although if that, are people off on the Monday for Thanksgiving?
We said October 14th?
18th.
Generally, because then that only leaves them like a 3-day work week if we do it the Friday.
Oh, with Thanksgiving, you're saying?
Because if Thanksgiving is the Monday, most people are off, right? Then they only would have the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, then they'd have another day off on the Friday. I don't know if that's ideal.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I'll leave that to the operational decision of the committee. Certainly, as staff, we'll work with whatever the committee decides. I know there have been times where you've chosen different weekends based on, say, a municipal election and not aligning with that. But I don't
Well,
see.
what if we had it on the Saturday that week though?
The 19th.
Yeah, because it's not going to interfere with their work week. And sometimes people are kind of annoyed it's during the week because they can't come. Maybe it's something to try.
It
We
may,
could.
sorry, Madam Chair, it may, depending on what kind of demographic we want to get. I think we focused so many years on like working professionals, but if we were trying to pull people from Smiths Falls, if we had a topic that was really interesting to them, on a weekend, we may be able to pull more residents.
And I was thinking too, our topic that we've been just kind of brainstorming was trying to get the town of Smiths Falls to recognize that we'd like to have a heritage district. And it might be easier for those people who are pro-heritage districts and having homes in them to come on a Saturday rather than a Friday. So it might be a positive thing that way. We can try it.
Sure.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm open to try.
So that you're thinking now Saturday, October
19th,
the
yeah.
19th. Okay. Well, it's tentative right now, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah. And how about the venue? We've gone to the Station Theatre several times.
Yeah, it's actually a good place for it. I like their theater. It comes with someone to help. Like it's kind of the reason we've chosen it. The only difficulty we've had in any way has been to get caterers, right? But that's going to happen wherever you are.
I think one of the difficulties there was that setting up of those tables.
Yeah, up high,
Those,
up above.
yeah. But where else would you? I mean, I off the top of my head, I can't think of another venue that offers the theater and the possibility of having lunch in the place as well.
What about the arena?
Upstairs in the arena?
Yeah,
Yeah.
is that an option for you guys at the arena?
That's
We've
true.
never used it, and one of the reasons I think was that it can often have a game and have like all kinds of things happening that are quite obtrusive and noisy
There become compatibility issues then.
on a
Yes.
weekend, particularly.
Yes, that's
Saturday.
true.
Well, you
That's
know.
true.
Saturday's booked with minor hockey, generally speaking.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the buzzer goes off, and
Yeah.
like there's lots of events that happen there on a Saturday.
Oh no, I know.
But
I know.
there
It's
is
just that.
The pucks and the buzzers. And,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
have we ever considered lunch on their own? Having
No, we haven't, have we?
people having lunch on their own, that would save the trouble. I don't know.
Yes.
Just if I could add my experience as a principal, that never works because people don't come back at the same time, and they have a great time and they just have another glass of wine and then the place stays empty and you have like 4 or 5 people for the afternoon session.
When we went to the Heritage Conference in Brockville, it was that way, though. People went, we have tickets for certain restaurants where we got good deals, and we all went out
Oh, that's true.
and had our lunch, and then we went to whatever the afternoon session was. So
Oh, well, I don't care. Try it.
maybe that would involve more of the downtown restaurants in
Yeah, that would
more,
maybe
they
more
become
interested. Yeah.
more. It involves them in it to some extent, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
Maybe make them more aware.
Now the walk from the walk from the theater
yeah, that's
downtown
true.
isn't a
That's
quick
true.
walk.
Yeah, that's
The Station Theater, you mean?
Uh-huh.
To here? To
To
downtown?
the downtown area where the restaurants are. I mean, people might just all drive us to a certain place, but
yeah. Yeah, I think
some years we've talked about having it delivered outside, like outside the theater itself. The problem with that's always weather.
Mhm.
But it does eliminate the carrying of things up to the top floor.
Mhm.
It is a bit of a pain for sure. Well, why don't we just do something really new? What can go wrong? It just can not work as well, why don't we just say we're gonna, and maybe we can work with some restaurants close by to give those kind of, choice coupons.
Yeah.
And so if we have a different day and a different way of doing it, maybe we'll, generate interest among people who haven't attended it before.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. You think about that then. So you're thinking the Station Theatre?
I think the Station Theatre, and then like your suggestion of then you just go
Lunch
to
downtown.
you go, and I guess in our advertising, we'll tell them to plan, grab your friends and meet together or go with a group. Because the other thing would be, if we had, like we've had 60 people sometimes, if we had 60 people going to just 2 restaurants, that would be.
No, we'd need, they certainly got sprinkled around in Brockville.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's good progress.
Yeah, there you go. Didn't even have a meeting.
Sorry, Madam Chair, should we have somebody check in with the Station Theatre and make sure it's available? that day?
Yes, we should.
I can send that email if
Okay.
everybody's okay with that.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, thank you very much. The next project update is the Algonquin College Facade Recovery Program. I'll turn it over to you, Carl.
Sorry, I just had Madam Chair, if I may, just I guess a suggestion for the committee as well to start thinking early about speakers. For a lot of our past symposiums that have been held on Mondays or Fridays, we've had municipal employees and those sorts of folks coming in as speakers would be part of their workday. So I think we'll have to give some thought earlier on to who, certainly the topic for this one, and developing that theme, and then finding the right people to. That's not necessarily a bad thing, having a different array of speakers, but certainly I'd urge the committee to give some consideration.
Wouldn't it be easier for them to be one when it's on a Saturday than during a week when they're working regularly? No?
Well, if it's part of their workday, then I guess then there's that question. Well, I guess that's for them to work out with their employer if it's a question of overtime or what have you.
Right.
So I'm not sure if that would be a constraint. Maybe it doesn't even make a difference at all. But I guess the suggestion I would make to the committee is to, I guess the next step is finalize that theme and start developing the speaker list.
I think the most important part, that's always been the hardest part, is to have dynamic speakers that people want to come and hear. And we haven't even given that any thought yet, so that might be somewhere to start thinking about. But the other thing that maybe we're spending too much time on this, but I think the biggest selling feature for the public and for our town is going to be that there's no real risk to the homeowner. Because the more I talk to people about it, because I live in an area, I'd love it to be a heritage district. I'm fine. I'd be just dancing in the street. But there are people who think that comes with limitations, color of paint, doing certain things, changing, parts of your building, all that kind of thing out of fear. So I think that's one of the things that we're going to have to make sure we do well.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe our speakers should be actual people from Perth and other areas that have one that could talk about how it wasn't like that, that it was great, that they loved showing their beautiful heritage property off, that kind of thing.
Yes, Carl and I have put out feelers for people who live in the Perth district, but we haven't had any takers yet, or I haven't. Have you, Carl?
Not yet.
No.
Doesn't mean we won't.
That's true. Okay, sorry, I shouldn't have cut that off when I did. So now we'll go ahead with Algonquin College.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just make this quick. So I think the committee will remember that on January 23rd, we had a delegation from Sean Thompson. He's a heritage carpentry and joinery instructor at Algonquin College. He and his team had developed a facade recovery program with his department and the town of Perth, which was intended to work with property owners to support heritage sympathetic renovations to historic buildings And ideally, I think their rationale is to work on the plans and develop the plans, distribute the plans to the property owners, so that oftentimes when the town hears about a plan on a heritage property, it's already too late to really adjust the proposal to something that's in better keeping. So I think they're trying to get ahead of the game. So what they've been working on is developing a package of documents, including history, photo evidence, assessment of the current structures, heritage assessments, and recommendations on recovering and restoring the facade features. And that package is provided to property owners along with applications for heritage grants, which is something that the town of Perth has. So they'd approached us originally looking to investigate a similar sort of program in Smith Falls, and certainly I recall that the committee was very interested, just in general, in what was being discussed. I guess the limitation to the scope of the work this year is that the municipality's budget, of course, had already been set, so there wasn't too much that we can do budget-wise. That conversation had picked up again a couple of weeks ago, and the proposal was presented to the town, and that's ultimately to assess and make recommendations for properties in the town. So they're proposing a couple of things here that would include identifying buildings, big architectural style for potential heritage designation, research of the history of properties, facade, and as well as the facade recovery program might include construction drawings. The town is asked to kick in $1,000 to this, with a much larger proportion of the costs covered by grants received by the college. So that would include the operations disbursement, that would include the coordinator supervising the project, 20 hours a week times 4 weeks, and 4 student researchers who would be doing 35 hours a week for those 4 weeks. And at the end of the day, from our perspective, we want something that's, obviously we support the college and the students getting good educational value, but we want something that's useful for us and our residents as well. So I think one thing, and the chair and I had been discussing this as well, is that we're looking at zeroing in outside of the HCD study area as sort of as a pilot project this year, just to see how it works, see what the fit is. And I think once and if we have a heritage conservation district in place for the future years, and potentially a program like this can be aligned with sort of a more structural, institutionalized policy framework for a heritage conservation district. So I think there's a few different, and this is just an update for the committee as well. We're still working on with the college and sort of refining the scope of what they're looking at. But I think there's some neat opportunities here. Obviously, the property research to identify potential future designation properties. I know that's one thing that would bring in potentially be some value to the committee and to the community, as well as research and propose restoration approach for targeted properties. And in my mind, that's not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily have to be both. It could be either or. We could have designated properties that we've already targeted, but that would value a restoration proposal. Or alternatively, we could have properties that are in lovely shape that don't really need that, but maybe would investigate designation. So I think one thing that we're working on is ultimately developing a sort of a work plan and a summary that makes the best sense for the community. So at this point, I'm just updating the committee with where we're at right now with the conversations, just letting you know that that's ongoing. There's certain administration elements that need to be worked on, outlining who's responsible for what. Obviously, the relationship between the project and our property owners and the town, clarifying those items. But at this point, I'm just giving the committee a heads up that this idea has resumed, and we'll see where that goes. We'll keep you up to date.
Who is the we that you refer to?
We,
like you're saying, we are doing these things. Is that yourself and who else?
That's our department. I've been
That's planning department.
Planning department, yes.
And who is that now? No, Richard is. He just told me. And yourself. Aren't we missing some people?
We are in the process of recruiting for a planning clerk. That position hasn't yet been fulfilled, but
and that was Mary's position.
That's right.
Okay. No, I just wanted to clarify because that's a big shortfall when you have somebody, right? When you're missing somebody.
Yeah.
And that's happening, is it? Like it's coming.
Yes.
We're going to be advertising.
We have advertised.
Oh.
So right now we're working on the interview process.
Great.
So hopefully we'll have somebody in place soon, but I don't have an announcement to make on that.
No,
just yet.
I just wanted to make sure that's what I was understanding.
Yep, no, it is at the staff end. I've been keeping Dorothy as committee chair up to date on this as well, and Dorothy's been providing some advice back and forth as well. So, Dorothy, do you have anything to add?
Yes, I think what we'll have to do, or what we should do, is revive our committee that we formed earlier last year to look at potential new properties of interest. Because I think we should be able to recommend to the Algonquin College researchers which properties we want them to have a look at.
Mhm.
Yes,
I
Richard?
think we have a list of properties of interest already, don't we?
Yes, but I mean properties that are not on that list.
Oh.
That they might want to do some research on, properties that we haven't researched yet. There are still some outside of the study area that we've talked about in the past. For example, the North End plant. That's one that comes to my mind. You know where I mean, right? The old Frost and Wood North End
Oh, yeah,
plant.
yeah.
Or another one that we've talked about in the past is the Burke's Ignition building. It's
Yeah.
not called that now.
Yeah.
So there are some that we haven't really, we thought about them a little bit, we didn't find any information, and then we, moved on and researched other properties, so. I
Well,
think
we also have talked about in the past, the area that has the little tiny homes.
Yes,
I can't think of the street names right now.
yes,
But
yes.
that's very unique, and it's very unique to our town.
Mm-hmm.
But in not doing it, I've noticed the last while, a lot of them are changing,
Yeah.
like the structure, and then that's going to change that whole what that was.
Mhm.
Like it has that big central area as yard that's so unique to that little subdivision.
Mm.
Yeah, and those little wartime houses are so unique. But again, not being designated could mean that by the time we get around to it.
What kind of a timeline do we see for them starting this and wanting to have our input as to what properties they should look at?
So they are looking to do this work this summer. So I think perhaps the next, hopefully we'll be in position for the next MHC meeting where we have a little bit more detailed information that we can review with you and finalize those next steps.
Okay, good. So then after that, we can get our subcommittee together and start making some recommendations then.
So I think the idea was that this was while we work on the Heritage Conservation District process that will eventually, depending on how that ends up, establish a more sort of structured approach to heritage conservation and restoration. We're looking at these individual properties that we identify outside of that area first, just so we can work on the system, find an approach that brings value, and at the end of the day, subject to whether there's a budget consideration next year, look at potentially pairing this with implementing a heritage conservation district in future years.
And we wouldn't necessarily rule out properties that are on the list municipal register already, because if they're not yet designated, we might want more research done on those too, so that with a view to achieving a designation. So yeah, we'll in the month of May then we'll get our heads together and work on that. Okay, thank you for that update, Carl. Let's go ahead then with the priority issues. We saved them for you, Chris. Let's start with 25 Old Mill Road, the former water treatment plant update. And are you going to begin that, Carl, with your report?
Certainly. So thank you, Madam Chair. So this follows up some previous discussions and meetings that the Heritage Committee has had, as well as at the council table. As you know, a catastrophic fire has unfortunately significantly damaged the water treatment plant at 25 Old Mill Road, and following extensive consultation with insurance, reviewing a couple of different engineering reports, council made the difficult decision. I know it was not taken easily. They'd made the decision that the structure would be to pursue an insurance claim, which would involve the removal of the structures on the site. So that direction has been given by council. I'd like to welcome for the committee as well, Director of Community Services, Stephanie Clark. Her part of her portfolio, as you know, is working with our community facilities, and she's been sort of stick handling that process with insurance as well. So I think she's here if there are any questions from from committee members. But prior to the issuance of a demolition permit by the chief building official, the property owner is obligated under, as applicable law, to obtain authorization under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. So that part is the designation part. So before a structure on a designated property, regardless of who owns that property, can be demolished or removed, then council needs to approve an application to do so. So Section 34 of the Heritage Act requires council to consult with the Municipal Heritage Committee, if there is a Municipal Heritage Committee, prior to making a decision as to whether to authorize the demolition. So in practice, when we look at those sorts of things, council passes a resolution, and that resolution can be accompanied with various conditions. So the Act does not state how the consultation shall occur, nor that Municipal Heritage Committee must consent to it. It just states that MHC is consulted. So,
Can I ask a question?
Certainly.
No one consulted with us. At least to my knowledge, no one consulted with us tearing the building down.
Well, I think Stephanie came and made a presentation. She gave us her report. And now we're responding to it. So perhaps that does constitute consultation. Carl?
Yes, so at this point so part of that, we have an application, a formal application under the Heritage Act is being, for the demolition is being assembled. And so council can also establish whatever conditions are deemed appropriate. So typically if there's resolutions regarding demolition or alteration, then that resolution is accompanied by a number of conditions. So staff have been given direction by council to take the steps with the insurance leading to the demolition. The Heritage Act approval still needs to occur. It has not yet occurred. So in accordance with the role assigned to the Municipal Heritage Committee, the committee may provide feedback or suggested conditions to council in advance of them considering a formal Heritage Act application to remove the structures on the property. So at this point, we're left with the situation that we have right now and looking at a potential demolition of the property. So the Municipal Heritage Committee has the ability, if they so choose, to provide feedback, commentary, or recommendation to council to advance that. So at this point, we have a suggested resolution, and at the end of the day, this is Municipal Heritage Committee to do with as you choose, but we have a suggested resolution here that articulates the values that the Municipal Heritage Committee places in that structure, and that if council were to authorize that demolition, formalize that demolition, a number of conditions are attached to it. So those conditions reflect the salvage and storage of stone, masonry, and other heritage defining elements. The designation of the bylaw applying to this property be repealed. Of course, with the structures being removed, the bylaws essentially redundant. A recommendation that prior to demolition, all cultural heritage resources to be removed are documented through an appropriate assessment for archival purpose with history, photographic record, and measured drawings in accordance with industry standards. That language comes out of our official plan. And also that council establish the appropriate planning tools at the time of the sale of the land or its future development to establish an expectation that new development is appropriately sympathetic to the heritage context of the area and appropriately reuses material in a manner that is consistent with heritage best practices. So at this point, that is, if the Municipal Heritage Committee agrees to this and council agrees to this, then through the planning process and and potentially the sale of the land, that we take that best opportunity we have to establish the expectations for what a future structure is going to look at, and the Municipal Heritage Committee be consulted and provided the opportunity to provide feedback on the design of any new building before it's finalized. So that would be a typical expectation through a site plan approval process, but that suggested condition there enforces that. So at this point, the committee's direction is invited as to how and whether they wish to provide feedback to council in advance of approving the demolition. So if the committee does wish to advance a resolution, either that which is outlined in the report or something else, then we can take that to council for council's consideration. And again, I thank Director Clark for sitting in here as well. If committee members have any questions about sort of the process and sort of that end of the next steps that need to occur. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, so we have a draft resolution here, and before we discuss it and ask questions, I think we should have it moved and seconded. Would someone move that we put forward this resolution?
I will move.
Okay, thank you. Jenny moves that we put forward this resolution for discussion. Would someone second that, please? Chris seconds it, thank you. So now it's open for discussion and comments, and I think you all have a copy of the whereases and the therefore included in the report that Carl gave us. So comments, questions, discussion, please. Stephanie, would you like to make any comments?
If there's any questions.
No. Just taking time to have a detailed look at it.
Madam Chair, if this passes, when would we expect it to go to council?
Carl?
It could go to council as early as next Monday. We're just working on some scheduling at that end.
Chris?
Has a demolition permit been applied for yet?
Not to the best of my knowledge, and the demolition permit cannot be issued until that aspect of applicable laws has been satisfied under the Heritage Act.
So this wouldn't need to be passed by the MHC until the permit's in play.
So
Carl, go ahead.
So council has the authority to pass a resolution with respect to authorizing the demolition under that section of the Heritage Act. So that resolution can be accompanied by conditions. So the MHC is obligated to be consulted. The Act does not tell us how that were to occur. So if this, and again, Stephanie can speak a little bit more towards the to the timelines, but I'm not sure what sort of where the process is with respect to the next steps and the contracting and all of that. However, council needs to the municipal heritage authorization can come as early as next Monday. If the committee wishes to pass a resolution but is not ready to this evening, I'd let Director Clark speak to, I guess, her operational requirements.
Okay.
Okay, now, so what we're, the process that we're undertaking right now with the insurance is that we have not yet given them the direction to move forward with the demolition because we're still negotiating a few components around bringing in additional quotes. And so that we wouldn't be applying for the demolition permit. The contractor that is selected will actually be the one that applies for that. So it would be helpful to have all of this in place so that we can move forward as efficiently as possible when that happens. It's the town's intention, staff intention, to turn that over to the management of the demolition is actually going to be in the hands of the insurance company. So we won't be overseeing it. The momentum towards having the town enact the policy is to have IPE, Intact Public Entities, manage the demolition.
So are you saying that now is the time for us to do this before it's handed over?
Ideally within the month of April. would be best.
To make our resolution and present to council, okay? Brian, you wanted to say
Well,
something?
I'm a little confused because I thought that what we just proposed was the resolution, the draft resolution of what we'd like to see in that area was going to impact this. But when I see all this like gone, all this sounds like they're just going to tear it down and build something that could be very modern.
Well, one of our statements is new development to be appropriately sympathetic to the heritage context of this area and appropriately reuse materials in a manner that is consistent with heritage best practices. So
That's not in here though.
no, but you don't have. Look at the one on the back. Carl's report.
In front of you.
Pardon me? You mean here?
Yes. Yes.
And that's the one that you showed me earlier. I'm getting confused.
No,
by
no.
How they connect.
There was my first attempt at a draft. Then there was then Carl and I discussed it, and then eventually it came out in the form that you see in Carl's report.
Yeah, like
It's still a draft.
Yeah, number 5, and this I was just
Yes.
Municipal Heritage Committee consultant provided the opportunity to provide feedback on the design of the new building.
Yes.
That's really important to me.
Yes.
Okay, so that is still part of
That's
this.
still part of the resolution. Yes.
Okay.
We're requesting a consultation. Any other, Chris?
I guess I'm trying to understand. I was trying to find the first resolution we passed because I remember that one was in the context of a demolition, and just trying to understand what this one adds to it, because I just don't want to be any more complacent than we have to be in the process of it. So,
Well, the first resolution was where we asked that it not be demolished, but that we retain the stone building and the brick building, and that isn't like going to happen, is it?
no, but I still, based on all the information that was gathered in the last year, like I still think that would have been the best route to go.
Mm-hmm.
So where I'm hesitant on this is just if it softens our stance on that, because I like my opinion on it hasn't changed,
No.
but I accept that we're put in a corner by the insurance company.
Yes.
So I guess that's where my hesitation is with this. The second point I wanted to bring up is, I don't know if I'm going to pronounce it right, but photogrammetry is when you can take a drone with a camera and fly it up and down. And then you can take all of the images it produces and make a 3D model out of it, which is a really high resolution, 3D realistic example of what it was. And it was one of those things where it's like, we do it at work for the dams because you can get, you can see places that you can't get for a normal inspection. And it's really amazing the quality of like the underside of dams or parts that are usually underwater, not safe to access. So I don't think there's any reason why we couldn't fly one into some of the rooms, you know, maybe if some of that equipment is still there, get a really nice visual of it. So if we could add something like that into it, and I was thinking Confederation Bridge might be a good, if you did a 3D model of that, that'd be another way to use that technology. I have no idea what the cost or what the, what that would be for this kind of project, but that was the only thing, you know, I don't disagree with the therefores, but I just, I still disagree with the context that they come up. So
Yes, we still do.
yeah.
But I understand the council has already voted. Isn't that correct? To demolish?
Yeah, well, and that's the other side where it feels like we're, as much as we can pass this, I don't know what value it gives when they've already voted on it, or if they're going to.
And
Yes, please.
I guess, to add to Chris's point, my biggest worry or concern is that now that they voted to demolish the building that we all think was the beautiful building and should have been restored for the last 15 years, the building that goes up, in my opinion, and our judgment should be listened to, it should be sympathetic to that park, because that park was always a heritage area, heritage park. And if they put up a very ultra-modern building on it, it's not going to be appropriate for where it's sitting. I feel very strongly about that. And I think that's something we should be giving advice on, because the bridge itself is going to be very, very modern, ultra modern. And if the building is going to be the same, then we've lost a very special heritage park.
Well, I guess all we can do is ask to be consulted. Carl, you wanted to make a comment?
Yes, thank you, and I appreciate the feedback, and certainly the wording of the resolution, the whereas and therefore, was, I think it's deliberately worded so that it's not, the committee is not being asked to endorse the demolition. I think that's I guess it is what it is, but just in the event that demolition does proceed, I just wanted to bring that distinction there. I think the intent behind this resolution is not to bless the demolition, but if the demolition were to occur, then these are just a statement of values that the committee is requesting be considered and brought forward in the future in the next steps. So I think Councillor McGuire's, the phonometry, we'll work on the, I guess, pronunciation and that, but I'd wonder perhaps in condition number 3, the documentation, the intent of that is ultimately to get as much of a record as possible about what was there. Potentially that can
you can add that part.
Can add that part. Would that, Councillor, would that be added?
Yeah, and I think maybe like I would take out whereas the 1868 stone building line, because to me, whereas the 1868 stone building line remains in such condition that it could have been salvaged. So to say that it's that it's in such a condition that the stone can be salvaged, it's disingenuous for what our purpose is as the MHC. You know what I mean? It just, to me, that's one of those ones that kind of gets it. So I don't know if we could take that out, I would be more okay with it.
So removing what? Sorry, one sentence. What's the wording here?
Yeah, whereas the 1868 stone building line.
Okay.
We put that there though because we were concerned. Well, some of us were. We expressed concern that the insurance company was not going to let us keep the stone. And
are they not?
And they've suggested that they might not. I understand. And are they still suggesting that?
We're negotiating it.
Yes,
It's
they're still
a negotiation
negotiating
point.
it. Because,
Nothing's been confirmed at this point. We feel very strongly that we have a good case.
Good. Okay. So the idea was that we would get to keep our stones, that they wouldn't be sold off somewhere. And maybe that's not the right way to word it then.
Maybe if we worded it remains in such a condition that the building could have been salvageable and therefore a good portion of the stone could be salvaged, or
Okay.
just something that doesn't make it look like it's a pile of rubble that
Yes.
is reusable, because they're destroying a heritage asset to meet their insurance claim.
And what a shame, because I understood that buildings were built like that purposely so that if there was a fire, the stone remained, and it did.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yet it still has to go, it seems. So, yeah.
Don't insure your heritage buildings with intact public entities. That's, I guess, the lesson.
I guess so. Do we want to postpone voting on this, or do we want to think about it more? Does the committee wish to revisit it at the next meeting, Richard?
So are we postponing a decision on the motion because we don't know what the wording is yet? Is that correct?
Yes, I guess so. Yeah.
So we're just not comfortable in the wording right now.
we don't know what the status of the stone is, and like, to me, we don't have it.
Yeah, like I guess my take on it is that the council resolution did ask to salvage materials and keep materials. So I don't know that this motion's like it adds to that, but it's not like that would be something contradictory to what council voted on. I don't agree with the designation bylaw being repealed. I think that's something that council has to own. You know, prior to demolition, all cultural heritage resources to be removed and documented. That's an obligation under the Ontario Heritage Act that we're just iterating here. The council establish appropriate planning tools at the time of sale. The way the provincial government's changes to planning in Ontario has gone, I don't know that there's going to be appropriate planning tools. And I don't even know what is sympathetic to that site anymore. It used to be covered in industrial heritage properties and now it's completely flattened. So, you know what I mean? I don't know what that vision could look like. And I haven't seen any enthusiasm on the part of the developer for any kind of heritage engagement. So, like you could think the first proposal, the proponent came to an MHC meeting, came to council. We haven't had anything like that. There's been no vision for the site. And now that agreement's been extended for another 9 months. So it's just, I'm not sure what we're trying to accomplish with this, you know?
Okay, you think it should be more strongly worded, or do you think we shouldn't bother?
That's what I'm trying to guess. But if there's not, we're trying to use this as leverage with the insurance company to get more out of them. Is that the?
To some extent, yeah.
Okay.
The resolution itself?
Yeah.
I think our intention was to, more than anything, suggest to the developer that we have certain expectations which we can't specify when there's no plan and no design in place at all. Like there isn't any suggestion, but we don't want it to be just whatever you want.
Yeah.
You know, that's what we were trying to get at, I think, not.
So I guess could we reword the 1868 stone section?
Sure. Yes.
Take out that the designation bylaw be repealed.
The reason that's there is because Carl contacted the ministry to find out whether we should keep the designation on the property or have it set aside. And Carl, could you?
Yes, the advice I'd received, and I had that conversation, is there any value in retaining the designation bylaw potentially as leverage for any future development? But in this case, the designation bylaw it simply lists out the attributes are associated with a number of buildings that are proposed to be removed. So without the buildings, there's not really anything to enforce in the future with them being gone. So I think whether or not that particular point is in the resolution or not, I don't think it matters a whole lot. I think somewhere along the line we'll potentially, either through the sale of the property, this would be one of those things that we'd be looking at there. So I think I'll leave that at the committee's discretion. I don't think adding that provision, or I don't think removing that condition about the bylaw is going to meaningfully impact, I guess, the purpose of the intent, which is of this resolution, which is to convey the committee's values and expectations for future development.
Yes, Chris?
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I don't think now's the time or the place to do it because the buildings are still there.
But doesn't it have to be set aside before any demolition can occur?
Mm-hmm.
It does have to be, right?
But to me, that would be when the demolition permit's applied to at the town, and then the town's going to review the demolition permit. I don't want to streamline any of this, right? I don't want to make this any easier than it needs to be. Right. So it's more of a political statement than it is a functional statement, but I still think now's not the time. Personally, it's just not the time for me to repeal the bylaw when it's still standing there.
Okay. We can take that out then.
I accept that as a friendly amendment.
Yes, RJ, this is your.
Right, friendly.
The section
Number
where it
two.
repeals the
Number
bylaw. Number 2.
Number 2 down here, the designation.
Yeah. So do you still have concerns about it, Chris? Do you still think it's too weak or is it-
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of a better wording for that 1868 part. If any,
But is this being proposed to go to council to vote on, or is that gone now? I'm
No,
confused.
it's this one.
Yeah, but this is the one that we wanted.
Yeah, but it's been turned into this.
So that's the final.
This is the final draft,
Final draft.
Oh. the final
or you have an
draft.
earlier draft there. Where I took out the part about the Stone Arch Dam because it isn't part of the property.
That's too bad.
Yeah. But we, and that's another topic, but, if the Stone Arch Dam is not designated, then perhaps it should be. Unless it's owned by Parks Canada. I don't know the answer to that. Do you, Carl?
I don't offhand. I think that's certainly another conversation that we can have with the committee. I'm also jumping back into Lorraine's suggestion earlier about, I believe it would be in condition 4 and the heritage context of the area. So I think Lorraine, your concern was that section was a little bit vague, and that perhaps we want to identify the heritage context that or were you viewing the park as?
Well, I guess my concern is if there's someone that's going to build, like, I reread this and this is great, but if the person that's building it is just, all of this is just going to be given to the Municipal Heritage Committee to put somewhere, and then they're going to build a very ultra-modern hotel or something, some kind of building that's very, very, very modern looking, like the modern bridge, I will just be disapproving the whole thing. I can't vote yes on that sort of a park.
Chris?
yeah, I agree. But I also, on the other side, I'm thinking like I don't want a Disneyland kind of heritage, that pseudo heritage looking structure, and that's where I don't know what the right solution is now that there's not these structures to integrate
Mississippi
into it.
Mills, when they redesigned the factories and that whole all along the waterway, they made apartment buildings, and you'd hardly even know that the old buildings are gone because they were done so beautifully, and they're well lived in.
Yeah, that's
They're,
a
you
good
know,
example.
In fact, they're really sought after because they're great little apartments,
Yeah.
and that's what I would have preferred us to have.
If it hadn't burned down, right? I mean,
But we have an
we
opportunity
were
to-
hoping we were hoping that something like that would happen, but
Did anybody see the Kelly's Flowers post on Facebook with the, you know, that corner where the Coots Coffee is and what it looked like before they rehabilitated it? There was only 2 or 3 walls in that building. And I thought, wow, how can this be saved in Perth?
Mhm.
But in Smith Falls, we've got 4 walls on a structure that has a stamped engineering report saying it could be stabilized, and we don't have we don't have the insurance to do it. So anyway, all that to say, I think if to me that a good portion of the stone can be salvaged as part of the demolition
yeah, it
is kind of
doesn't-
part of that therefore number 1. So if we could say something like that the 1868 stone building at 25 Old Mill Road remains in such a condition that it could be stabilized or salvaged.
Yes,
Um,
and not say anything about demolition in that.
yeah, and then
It
that all
remains in
stone
such
masonry.
condition that it could be stabilized
Yeah.
or salvaged, right?
Because if this is going to the insurance company, I want them
Oh.
to.
Well, is it? It's going to council, but
Yeah.
So I can speak to that. So the intention is not to take the resolution and give it directly to the insurance company. This is also, if they need it, to provide some leverage to say, we've consulted with their municipal heritage committee, as they also requested that we speak to you. In the very beginning, going back about a year, they wanted to make sure that we were consulting, as you wrote, well, you were in the room, you recall. And so we want to make sure that we're continuing to bring that in, because obviously the salvage is really important to us, of the stone elements, all the masonry elements. So this allows us to have a fallback to say, see, our Municipal Heritage Committee really wants us to make sure that we're keeping these elements if we can. I'm not sure that it's necessary in the sense that it may not do anything. We believe that we have a pretty good position based on industry standard, actually, in terms of where things are at right now with demolition and salvage. We believe that we have a pretty good case as it is. This just gives us some additional padding just in case. So it's, you know, to Carl's point earlier, this is more about providing your stance and what you're saying around, and I think it's important to have that, you know, making sure you're not promoting the demolition, you're restating what your stance is, and then also looking into the future. And Carl and I have had several conversations around how do we create a space where we can have encourage through this sort of thing, sympathetic, whatever that looks like, ideally not, you know, Cinderella's castle, but how do we create a sympathetic experience in the heritage elements, I guess, of the new build.
Carl?
Yeah, and further to, and certainly further to what Stephanie had indicated, for especially as it relates to condition 4, we look at establishing that set of expectations. So if that resolution carries forward and is ultimately approved by council, then staff will take that direction when we look at planning tools. We look at, is there a zoning approach? Is there potentially a development agreement at the time of sale? And that gives staff direction to sort of investigate this and make sure that those planning tools are in place when we have the opportunity to address them, which is when the best opportunity to sort of use our leverage and setting our expectations is when the town owns the property. So I think based on council's direction there and setting those expectations, then we will take that forward and investigate is some sort of heritage easement, is a development agreement, is a holding zone, any of those tools that are potentially available, we'll investigate and find the best fit based on what we know and and the context of that property. So I think that's why that number 4 was worded a little bit openly, but I think just as that statement of intent.
Okay. Now, do we want to proceed with this, or do we want to bring it back to the next meeting with the rewording all sorted out? What do you think?
What do you think, Chris?
I guess I'd defer to Director Clark. If it needs to be done in April, I would, if it needs to be done in April, I'd rather do it now than have to have a second meeting.
I think I'm happy with how we've reworded things, and
Okay.
if you think it's clear now. then-
So just to review, we've reworded the whereas the 1868 stone building section, and we've, right, remains in such condition that,
Good portion of the stone.
no, Chris made new wording for that.
Yes, please verify. We want to get this right.
These are recorded now. It's like, how did I say it? 10 minutes. I think something like that it can be stabilized or
Right.
salvaged.
That it can be stabilized.
Yeah.
Or salvaged, right.
Yeah,
Stabilized for salvage or stabilized and
Or.
salvaged?
Or
well, I think it would be or, because,
And
if
or.
it's stabilized, it's not going to be it's not the same thing.
Stabilized and or.
yeah, maybe and.
And then the other change is that the number 2 under therefore is removed completely.
So the section about removing the designation bylaw,
Yes.
right? Okay.
And then could we add a new 2 or a new 5 that we try to get that scan of the buildings done so we could get that 3D model with the pictures?
Yeah. and
We're going to add that to number 3, I believe.
Okay.
Are you saying it the way that they'll be able to understand why? Because I didn't, you talked about it or described it, but do we need to have a specific name for it?
Yeah,
Does it
Specific
mean-
name for it.
We can, I think for that, if we agree with
I think that's a great idea.
just to firm up, I want to make sure I get the spelling right, and I don't want to
Okay.
be looking that up right now. So if we're okay with finalizing the wording, you know what I mean, the specific, but it's photogrammetry is the word we've been using.
Yeah, because it's already listed a history, photographic record, and measured drawings, so we can add
Ooh, yeah.
the right into that statement, right?
The word there.
Photogrammetric.
Yeah, they spelled it. You got it right. GRAMMETRIC.
We can take that.
It is the science and technology of obtaining reliable information about physical objects in the environment through the process of recording, photographic, measuring, and interpreting images of structures.
I'm not against the idea, but if it's a burnt building, what would be the benefit of having a burnt building, having everything saved? Like, what would be the intent of that? Like, why would you want to keep that? Because it's already burnt. So is it just for posterity?
The stone, you're saying? Is
No,
that-
not keeping the stone. Like when you do all the imaging, right?
Right.
And you have all the images of the burnt exterior and interior and all that. So what would be the value in keeping that for? Is it for posterity? It's just to say that this is the end result.
From a scan this detailed, it would be, you'll be able to see exactly how it was built, exactly how it looked, like you'll be able to record in time what it's like right now. And as much as it would have been better to have done it 5 years ago or 2 years ago or 18 months ago, we didn't. So yeah, it's not ideal, but it would be the best last way to document the site.
So it gives you a snapshot in time, or is it just of the past as well? It's just only of the image as it stands?
Yeah, like as much as it's not going to be as nice as if the building was still there, it's still going to give you the masonry elements and the architectural features and the craftsmanship that went into it.
Cool.
But I have no idea what the cost would be
Then
associated with
someone
something like
could
that.
replicate it. Is that right? By the drawing?
In theory, yeah, you could, in 100 years, if you wanted to build something similar, you'd have pretty much blueprints, with all the other documentation we've got. It's a really good as-built example. And for the equipment stuff that,
The old equipment, it would be nice to document that, wouldn't it?
and they're very, I'm impressed with how far the quality's come of them. It is a really good kind of walkthrough.
So we've added that to number 3 then? All right, so with these amendments in place then, are we ready to vote on this? Are we okay now? All in favor of the resolution then?
Voting again for the same resolution.
We haven't voted on it yet. We've only moved and seconded it so far and discussed.
Oh,
So now we're going to vote on whether we want this.
With the changes.
With the amendments that have been
Okay.
recorded in the
Catching
minutes,
up
right?
now.
We're going to vote on whether we are going to present this resolution to council. So all in favor? Okay, unanimous then.
good.
Thank you. And thank you, Chris, for your input. And now we're on to the Ontario Heritage Act, the amendment petition, which has come to us by way of the town of Fort Erie and the Architectural Conservancy of Ontario. So, Carl, are you going to address this?
Certainly. So every once in a while, our clerk's office receives resolutions, motions passed by other municipalities for looking for comment and support. And this is one that directly applies to the Municipal Heritage Committee's mandate. So this was filtered to senior staff and then also to the Municipal Heritage Committee for your information and consideration. So as you know, there have been some changes to municipal planning and heritage policy, and one of those relates to the registry of heritage properties, and specifically the properties of interest. So properties that have been identified by the Heritage Committee as of value and significance, but do not have the protection for designation. So as the committee recalls, if a property is listed but not designated, then simply what that means is it puts a 60-day pause on the demolition. So in this case, the province's changes to the Heritage Act require that properties that are listed, and lots of municipalities have like huge registries. I think the city of Ottawa has, a couple thousand properties that are listed of interest. And normally these often, like without the substantial Heritage Act protection, there's not much that happens there other than simply that they're recognized and sort of almost a statement maybe these properties will never be designated, but at least it just acknowledges their significance. I think that's what we're trying to say. So the Heritage Act now requires that properties be listed for a maximum of 2 years. After 2 years, that gives us the opportunity to investigate whether they should be designated, or else they fall off the registry and then they can't go back on for 5 years. So what that means is, since this came into effect at the beginning of 2023, that puts a lot of pressure on municipalities to investigate their listed properties. So, and a lot of municipal heritage departments are very small. They don't have significant resources to really do the research and sort of scramble to, I guess, find the appropriate heritage solution for the properties. So what the Fort Erie resolution is looking for is simply more time to get that consideration. So last year, this committee will recall that we discussed this and decided that rather than chasing the designation for individual properties, we would be pursuing the Heritage Designation District. So I think the committee decided with the limited resources that we have, we would get our best bang for our buck by focusing our efforts on the Heritage Conservation District. So I think what some other municipalities are doing, I guess, is they're making a different choice and they're just scrambling to designate as much as they possibly can. So I think this resolution simply asks for more time, and I'm welcome any feedback from the committee if you'd like to, as from the staff end. I think that's logical. I think it is. I think more time really gives everybody the opportunity to really give some thoughtful consideration to how we want to assess our heritage resources. These things shouldn't be rushed. I understand why the province is looking to go where they're going, but I think given the I guess the reality of municipal heritage departments, I think more time avoids us from rushing into potentially making mistakes.
I really like it. I think when this policy first came out, there was no way it was going to work in the timelines they put out. I'm just wondering, could we endorse it as the MHC, but send it to council as therefore both the MHC and the council support this, and keep everything else the same in it, but just get it from that extra level?
Yes, because this resolution came from a council, so it didn't come from an MHC, although it may have in the first place.
Yeah.
So yes, we should do that.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
So asking for council support, endorsements.
Yes, the MHC would endorse this resolution and would request that town council do the same.
Join them.
Join, yes.
Okay, works for me.
It's request for more time. Is that right?
Yeah, so I'd move that we endorse it and recommend that it be sent to council for approval.
And would someone second that, Lorraine? Okay, so all in favor? All right, good, thank you. Roundtable, anyone? Carl?
Just a quick update. So we're on the Heritage Conservation District. Our consultants have done their field work. They've explored our downtown, and they did it just before the snow. So the Heritage Committee will host at the next meeting, where it's expected that our consultants will be delegating to the Municipal Heritage Committee, updating you on what they found and sort of the progress and next steps. That meeting will happen. I guess we're looking to schedule that in May. We want to make sure that it works at a time where Dorothy is going to be here as well. But that meeting will be preceded by a first public information session where the consultants will host a public meeting and get the broader intake from the community and our stakeholders as to the heritage attributes that they value in the downtown core. So I'd just like to give the committee the heads up that we'll have a delegation at our next MHC meeting.
And is that the 14th of May?
True. About 4:30.
Dorothy, that's you'll be back for that?
Yes, I will. Is
I
that
think
date okay with everyone? It's the second Tuesday instead of the first one.
Is it better? Second Tuesday is better?
Well, in my
It's
case
always-
this time, yes, yeah. Any other roundtable No?
I had
Okay.
one, now I can't think of it. Yeah, that's gone. Sorry.
All right, next meeting then is May 14th at 4:30, and they will have, you're going to invite them, right? And
That's
they,
right.
yeah, okay. Hopefully they can come then. Would someone move that we adjourn? Lorraine, thank you. Meeting adjourned.
All right.
They
Yeah.
promised us that they'll be at the next meeting. They just want us to confirm the date, which has now been confirmed.
Who is that?
Okay.